Hey guys, Adam Painter with E3 Firearms Association out here on a beautiful day at the range, just working on some drills. Today one of the things I came with the range to work on was reloads. So I'm going to work on today my emergency reloads and my magazine exchanges, or also known as tactical reloads. So let's talk about that first one real quick. Emergency reload, also known as a slide lock reload. And what I mean by slide lock reload is you get to the point where your slide locks to the rear on an empty magazine. You know, most modern semi-automatic pistols, when you run out of ammunition, the slide of course is going to lock back to the rear on an empty magazine. And that reload type is typically referred to as an emergency reload or slide lock reload. And I like both those terms, they're interchangeable. When I'm teaching and working defensive type of shooting, tactical type of shooting, I often refer to as an emergency reload, and I refer to as emergency reload because it is an emergency. If you're shooting or you need to be shooting to defend your life or the life of somebody else, and your slide locks to the rear on an empty magazine, that, my friends, is an emergency. So we treat it as such. And obviously, technically, it's a slide lock reload because the slide has locked to the rear on an empty magazine. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how to do with that. And you got to kind of multitask a little bit to be able to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and set the drill up. I'll throw my ears on, and I'm just going to kind of talk through this. So I'm going to talk through this as I do it, and then I'll do a couple at kind of medium speed so you can see what's going on. To set myself up for this drill, guys, I've got an empty magazine. I'm going to place one round in it, and I'll go ahead and I'll load up my pistol. So pistol's all loaded up, ready to go with an empty magazine in it, and I've got plenty of ammunition with my spare magazines in my pouch. So let's just kind of break this down. Obviously, we have our shooting objective, whatever that may be. So I'll get it out, get my pistol out, I'll take my shot, and at that point, you're gonna feel something. You know, you can tell folks who've been shooting a lot, and when they shoot, they know they ran out of ammunition because the gun actually feels different in your hand. You know, I didn't feel that slide go back and all the way forward, actually locked to the rear. And visually, I should probably pick up peripherally out here the fact that my slide is locked to the rear. It's just a situational awareness thing, being aware of the condition of my gun. All right, so at this point, I have my finger on the trigger, I shot, and the slide locked through on an empty magazine. What I want to try to do at this point is I want to try to multitask. I want to try to get this magazine out, at the same time access my fresh magazine. So my finger's going to come off the trigger, and that's obviously important. You don't want to be running around with your finger on the trigger. So I shot, my finger's on the trigger. After I shoot, my finger comes off the trigger. I'm going to break that grip. This hand is going to come down to my magazine, and you want your magazine set up for success. Personally, this is the way I carry my magazines, and most folks out there will, with the bullets forward, so the bullets are facing forward. That way I'm going to index my mag with my other hand, and I'll just use my index finger to do that. So I'll come down on the mag, index finger forward. As I'm coming out, my finger will be about where the tip of that bullet is. So two things happening simultaneously. This hand's going down here and doing this. What this hand is doing up here is I'm going to shift my hand a little bit, just enough so I can hit that magazine release. Most of us can't hit the magazine release without giving a little shift in the hand. So I'm just shifting the magazine, or shifting the gun in my hand a little bit so I can get that magazine to drop out. So kind of slow-mo, kind of looks like this. I'm coming off the trigger, coming off the gun. This hand's going down here, shifting that gun, and I'm just going to let that magazine drop. That magazine's empty. It's not doing me a lot of good. We're thinking about it, maybe a life and death type of situation here. So an empty magazine is nothing I need to retain. So as that magazine's coming out, I'm accessing this new one and looking where that magazine's going to go. Now you can try, if you want, keep your head up there on what's going on, try to get that magazine in a little bit. What I'll personally do is I'll break my vision briefly to see where that magazine goes, see the first bullet go in there, and then my eyes are back up on target and I'm fully seating that magazine. So I'm coming out, fully seating the magazine. Now another important note here is look where the gun is. As I'm doing these manipulations, the gun is up here. We typically refer to this as our workspace. All right, so if I'm working on something, right up here I can see it. If I bring my gun down, what happens when I bring my gun down? Well, my head goes down. And ideally, I want to keep my head up so I'm situationally aware. So that's why I'll kind of keep this gun in what we'll call the workspace type of area. So releasing that magazine, kind of break through that again. So I'm on the trigger, coming off the trigger, finger off the trigger, multitasking. One hand's going to here, one hand shifting the gun, dropping that magazine out. It's up here in my workspace. I see where that magazine goes. Once I see that first bullet go away, My eyes transition back up to where my threat or target area is, and I'm just driving it in there. Guys, you don't have to slam this thing home. See, a lot of guys are slamming it home so hard that the slide's going forward, sometimes picking up around and sometimes not. But we want to make sure, obviously, it's going to seat. So as it's going up in there, it's going to seat. And at this point, I'm doing one or two things. I'm either going to send the slide forward using my mechanical slide catch lever, or I'm going to rack and release the slide. Both are great options, and both have pros and cons to them. So let's kind of break that down. After I've inserted my magazine, what I will typically do, what I find is the fastest thing to do, but doesn't necessarily work all the time, is I'll hit my slide catch lever. So look where my thumb is. My thumb is up over my slide catch lever, which is right there. So it's all ready to go. So as that magazine's going in and seated, my thumb's on top of that slide catch lever. So all I have to do is, once it's in there, I'm just hitting that slide catch lever down. My grip continues. I'm pushing out to my target, and I continue to fire. So it's all ready to rock and all set up. Another way to get your slide to go forward is, after you insert your magazine, you can rack and release your slide. So think about me personally, winter times I'll do something like that. Well, how about a gloved hand? So I'm in New Hampshire, certainly don't need them today, but if I'm working in a cold weather environment, I've got gloves on, things like that, and I can't easily hit that slide catch lever, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to rack and release that. So the way that looks is, as I go into the magazine well, I lock that magazine in. This hand right here is going to go right up over the top. So magazine's in, hand goes right up over the top. So I've got my palm here on these serrations, I got my fingers on the serrations on the other side, and all I'm going to do, once it's in there, palms here, fingers here, I'm going to give it a good rack, make sure I got a good chamber in there. I didn't, like I have it half in battery or anything like that. So a good rack, and then I'm coming back up on my grip to finish it up. So that's basically the reload sequence. So I got a couple options there. I'm going to kind of run you through a couple of those so you can kind of see what's going on there. The big thing is you want it technically correct. Now, is it the end of the world if it's not technically correct? No, it's not. But if you want to kind of master something, you want to kind of do everything correctly and optimally and efficiently. And this way, when I start working fast, or I have other stressors like low light conditions, things like that, moving targets, I'm moving, I want everything to kind of fall in place. And if I've trained for this event, I'm going to kind of have it down. So I want to make sure this is as smooth as possible and as efficient as possible. So at this point, I'm going to set myself up to do that process one more time. This will be live fire, and I'll just run through. This first one, I'll kind of talk myself through it, the slide lock reload or the emergency reload. So let's break this down, what it looked like at about half speed. So I'm coming up out of the holster, finger on the trigger, taking my shot. I'm out of ammunition, fingers off the trigger, multitasking. I drop that magazine. I got my new magazine all ready to go. I had an index down here. Notice my thumb is up over the slide catch lever. I see that first bullet go away. My eyes transition back to the target. My slides forward. I'm back up on target, and I can continue to fire. So that's kind of the sequence right there. So that is a emergency reload. So let's try that again without me talking through it, just so you can see it again at about half speed, so you can kind of see everything broken down. There it is. So that's the emergency reload using the slide catch lever. So now let's do another couple racking the slide. And as we talked about, not a whole lot different. We're just racking the slide, like we said, maybe in a glove hand type of situation, that may work good. Or maybe we're a left-handed shooter and we don't actually have a slide catch lever on the other side of the gun, so that's going to be the option. Obviously, this is two-hand work we're talking about. One hand, a whole nother story, whole nother segment. So this time I'll do it while racking the slide. So let's see what that looks like. Coming out, I'm taking my shot, slide locks to the rear, everything's the same. I got a multitask here. This hand's going, shift, get that magazine out, magazine goes in. Once I start to see those bullets go away, my head transitioned up, and instead of hitting that slide catch lever, coming over the top, racking it, back up on target, and I can go ahead and finish that shot. So let's see that without me talking through it, and we'll give it just a little bit more speed. Again, about half speed, because I want you to be able to see what's going on there. So here we go. Slide lock reload, manipulating the slide instead of the slide catch lever. Kind of look like this. Magazine in, and I hit the slide catch lever because I'm just so damn fast and just so used to doing that. Let's try that again and doing it the way I talked about. I'm kidding, of course. Here we go, knocking through that slide lock reload, and I'm going to manipulate the slide. Instead of hitting that slide catch lever, it looks something like this. in, and I'm coming right over the top, racking it, and taking the shot. Let's try that one more time so you can kind of see what's going on there. One more time. I'll use the rack method instead of the slide catch lever. I won't talk about it. I'll just kind of go through it about half speed. And there it is. So that's slide lock reload. So slide lock reload, also known as emergency reload, and we talked about why we call it those two things. There's a couple different methods. Now realize there's probably 100 different ways to do what I just described. These are the two ways I found have worked for me, whether using the slide catch lever or the rack method. Regardless, if it's this type of reload, you probably need a little bit of speed, especially if you're talking maybe a defensive tactical situation. So we want to get this maneuver down so it's efficient, it's clean, it's smooth. That way it's going to work in all types of conditions that we may run into out there on the street or in some type of dangerous type of situation. So Adam Painter with E3 Firearms Association. Thanks for watching. Make sure you visit our website.